And as a leader, ask yourself, do I really need to get involved in this? Or, or maybe even just offer sort of a pop-up type of solution as well. So I think also.
And every once in a while when there's a failure, right, unless it's fatal, right, you don't want it to be fatal, but don't rob the person of the opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
Hi, Lynette. Great to see you again.
Hey,
Session 2. And, we're going to jump right into the how might we challenge. And Lynette, you and I have been talking a lot because it's so topical to hear about, how do we get organizations more adaptive to change? And one of the things that we've noticed is that it's difficult for leaders often to have the right balance around how to stay at the right level, not to jump into the weeds.
Exactly.
And, when people jump in the weeds too far, too soon, too much, then really it sub-optimizes the contribution of often very, very talented people. And it's not that leaders are, ill-intended around it. It's just that, sometimes they find themselves just being, sucked into the vortex almost. So we're going to talk about how might we help them think about staying out.
Yeah.
And staying at the right level. And this would have a really important impact to being more scalable, to having more adaptive change, because you're going to really, get greater contribution from larger groups of people.
Absolutely. And the impact to the end user on that is that, they lose their confidence. I've seen it. I just saw it the other day. This girl that I'm coaching, she just looked at me and said, if it doesn't feel like my contribution is valued. And so therefore, this leader keeps diving into the weeds. And now, this person has said to me, I'm just going to do what they tell me to do. And I just don't feel like my contribution's there. And I feel like I can't do anything right. And so there's two things there, right? The impact to her contribution, but also the impact to her confidence.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell a story that's tangentially related to this, because in the world of sports, often, Lynette, obviously coaches can't do the work of the athlete, right?
Correct.
Yeah, you can't get in the weeds too much because once they get on the field of play, they're on their own. And I think there's an instructive story that Peter Jensen, who's a wonderful psychologist and works with the Canadian Olympic team, and he tells this story, and it's always stuck with me, and it would share with our audience. So a number of years ago, there was a prodigy speed skater, and she was expected to just do and just win medals her first time out on the Olympic ice. She was already breaking records and placing high in world standings, so the expectations of her were quite high. And by the way, the end of this story, she does go on to win in other Olympics. Many medals. Mm-hmm. But in this first race at this Olympics, she failed miserably. And she didn't even qualify. She was out of the medal race completely. And so she was distraught. And she had a grizzled coach who, was observing all this. And of course, these teams have psychologists that work with them. So she was off in the corner after her failed race, crying and weeping as she was trying to spin out on the spin bike, taking the lactic acid out. And rushing towards her was one of these very young psychologists, not Peter, but one of the psychologists assigned to this young woman. And this experienced coach grabbed the psychologist as he was going by and said, "Where the hell are you going?" And he says, "I'm going to comfort so-and-so." And she goes, "That's great. But why would you rob her of this moment? Mm-hmm. Why would you rob her of this moment?" Mm-hmm. And that story stuck with me so much because I think a lot of times the reason that leaders get in the weeds is they want to rescue. They want to take over. They're well intended. They're partly protecting themselves, but they're often protecting the people that work for them. And I think because we don't want anything fatal to happen. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times it's just a stumble.
Yeah.
But you have to allow people to learn. And I think there's something important about that for leaders to keep in mind. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, no, that's really good. That's really good. And yeah, I mean, they like you said, they well-intended, but they also need to get stuff done too. And I think there's always that allure of, oh, let's just get this done. It'd be just easier if I can just get in there and do it too. So I think, we have to caution leadership on that as well.
Yeah, and in the business world, unfortunately, particularly with people that have expertise, they can go and do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, this skaters coach couldn't go on the ice and skate for them, right? And so if we had that, and that's a little bit of an overworked analogy, but if we thought about it that way, and we had to always think about helping people to do what they needed to do, be successful in their own right, in their own context, that would keep us out of the weeds. We couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. But in business, it's too easy to say, I'll take that over, or if you just do this, if you just do that, if you just do this. And pretty soon people lose their sense, as you say, of confidence, and they give up, right? They go, well, screw it.
And, and I think too that they may not necessarily feel like that's the right solution either. I mean, I think when we're in a hurry to just get shit done, so to speak, like we talked about that before. We actually had that as one of our program hashtags, #GSD, but it was well intended because we also used it to collect feedback from leaders on the progress of our change. So I think that in our case, we've got this confidence and contribution impact, but we also get a situation where maybe that change or that whatever's going to be implemented to get done, it doesn't last, and it's not going to last because you didn't have the sort of the buy-in and the sort of the brain power of multiple people pulling together. So I think for me, it would be, if I was to say, wouldn't it be cool if, I think if every leader just used a real simple process and kept themselves elevated above the noise, and take a recommendation of creating a safe environment to get feedback from everybody, and I think sitting down and sort of talking through, kind of gaining clarity on what is it that we're trying to get done, document why it matters, collaborate together on terms of discussing why it matters to do whatever they're trying to do. And then I think they've got to be honest about the current realities, because there's a reason why that leader had to get into the weeds. Maybe there was some objections in the group, or the group didn't understand. There was something. So I think coming together collaboratively and holding this sort of, here's where we want to go, here's the prize at the end, here's what sort of our current reality is preventing us from getting there. How do we bridge that from our current reality to where we want to go? Yeah. And really sort of really kind of just find ways to close the gap. You're not going to get there all at once, but together, at least if you could come up with the right action steps and the processes that you're going to take, then I think from my perspective, I've seen it work. Now you've got this team marching in the same direction towards the same ultimate goal. And I think that's probably could be a big catalyst. The big catalyst for why leaders go into the weeds is because no one's really clear where we're going, and not everybody's on the same page of where we are today.
I want to jump onto that perspective, because I think we're both observing. We've got lots of experience observing, and I think particularly now with this pressure of speed. Mm-hmm. It's always been a lot of pressure on speed, but this thing about GSD and speed and everything else. A lot of times people think they know exactly. So I hear this, leaders go, this is what I want you to do. And you know what I want you to do? And it's yeah. And, because the person that's taking the assignment wants to get on with it, but the clarity is not there. And so even if it's written, and it almost has to take a contextual kind of nature. You almost have to see it, smell it, show what the light looks like on it. And it has to be almost visual. I mean, almost has to appeal to everybody's senses to picture, to say, that's what we want to accomplish. And then I think once that's clear, oftentimes I think success rate is much higher. So it's like a slow trigger, fast bullet, but we get in a hurry, right? People get in a hurry, and then pretty soon, and then when leaders get frustrated and impatient, I've heard them, they'll say this, oh, F it, I'll just do it myself. Or, they may not say it that explicitly, but essentially that's what they end up doing. And then pretty soon, it's like, well, I guess she or he just wants to do it all anyway. And then you hear the micromanage thing, blah, blah, blah. So maybe that kind of takes us to...
just before we go to the next thing, but I know, listening to you and I'm thinking, okay, well, what could our listeners be possibly thinking about it? And to me, I feel like we're not saying to go out and gain consensus, right? It's not about
No,
having a bunch of
no.
meetings and gaining consensus on something. It's about saying, okay, you know what, let's take a quick, 1 or 2 hours tomorrow morning. Let's get clear on where we're going. Let's get clear on why, what may be preventing us or where we're starting from. Or preventing us from getting there. And then really sort of storytelling, like you said, really describing and visualizing what that future state looks like. And then I think everybody just feels much better and we're all marching again to the same pattern. It's not consensus building is kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah, no, yeah, there's time for consensus, but there's time when, you're co-collaborating, which is a little bit different. You're almost co-creating the picture and the understanding, and it's really developing understanding.
And then it's going to go faster anyway because of that.
Exactly. And,
Exactly.
so, that kind of leads us, I guess, to maybe the kind of the action advice we give our listeners if they find themselves. So if you're a leader, I guess we're saying, the more you can invest in clarity of purpose and the boundaries and really invest there and really give thought to that in a full contextual kind of way. Just don't give it an assignment. It's not an email. Unless it's a very simple task. It's not it's something, that if it's got complexity to it, you need to really get into the richness and and make sure there's co-understanding there around who's involved. And I think the second thing that's important, and I don't mean to be trite about this, is that there are going to be stumbles along the way. That's where the coaching opportunity comes in. It's not about a signal to go, you're going to fail and therefore I'm going to step in. Stumbling is a signal to coach. Stumbling is a signal to support, and it actually builds confidence. And so you're looking for the failure signals to jump in to coach, not to jump in and do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess, what would you advise our listeners from if they're a participant on this side and they have a leader that tends to want to kind of, jump in?
That's actually a really good question. So reversing the table a little bit. I mean, one of the things I would definitely say is, hey, I've got a great idea. Why don't we just take a little sort of reflection session or a pop-up session tomorrow? And I mean, I love pop-ups. Let's just do a quick pop-up tomorrow, 1 or 2 hours, get together and again, really sort of defining what the future state looks like and where they want to go. And then, okay, sort of ideating what are their current realities, and then again,
I see you do that all the time. You used to do that with me all the time because sometimes, I'm notorious for giving directional assignments that don't have a whole bunch of clarity. I mean, talk about, but I need help from people that work for me to go, hey, Lorne, I think in your head you get it. You've been talking to yourself in your head on this.
Yeah,
but
that is.
I really want to clarify with you. So don't be in a hurry to go and just do stuff if you think don't assume that you have that picture. And also, because we pivot so much these days, it's really great to pop up all the time. It's not to ask for permission or it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of constant co-creation as we go forward. And and I just think it's a reminder to, once the clarity is there and you're going in the right direction, to also remind leaders that sometimes they want to change the color of the font or something like, and it's not very value added. So they try and make an improvement that brings 5% more value to something. And in doing so, they take away the joy and victory of their teammates. Stay the hell out and it may not be exactly the way you want it, but, judge
that is an excellent point, because I think those small little trying to go for A+ or even an A- on anything, you're going to just get stalled. And a lot of what I've learned sort of through my online marketing side of my world is, go for B-. Go try to put something out there that's sort of B+, because, quite frankly, probably my B+ is going to be a lot of people's A's. Like I'm just that kind of way. And you coached me on that yesterday, a little bit, saying, hey, listen, you kind of always wanting to get to that level of perfection. And that's just, I guess, the Virgo in me. But I think sort of, if we could summarize what are the takeaways, for me, it's get out of the weeds, be much more intentional about being out of the weeds, and as a leader, ask yourself, do I really need to get involved in this, or or maybe even just offer sort of a pop-up type of solution as well. So I think also.
And I want to end with the story, Lynette, around, you know what? And every once in a while when there's a failure, right, unless it's fatal, right, you don't want it to be fatal, but don't rob the person of the opportunity to learn.
Yeah,
Let them
that's really
soak
good.
in that, because you're going to build more confidence. And what a gift to give to someone. Don't take it away from them.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a good place to end. And well, it's a great conversation, Lynette. And I hope our audience enjoys it as much as I enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Lauren.
Yeah, bye for now.